Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. It's great to see all of you, the regulars in the chat, the panel in the back, and everyone here together for comic books. So it's a wonderful thing to see. Harmony and peace brought on the stream, all unified by comic books. That's an amazing thing. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It's great to see so many different faces. Let's jump in and see some of these faces in the chat. We've got Wilberforce Wooster. He is begging for this stream to begin. He wants the harmony. He wants the peace. He yearns for it. His soul is screaming out. He says, "The design on the Finatra mech is true artistic genius." Well, I mean, thank you. I'll take that compliment. Linkovich Chamovsky is here. He says, I imagine Twitless would have a hot pink mech. See? So much harmony in this stream. We're all harmoniously hating on Twitless's pink mech. So it's a great thing to see. Here's a Twitless. How about fuchsia? It's not even funny, Twitless. I don't know why you try. Ahmed is here. He says, Dark Gif is a snake. Do not trust him. Thank you, Ahmed. That's useful information. James Hayes, he says, hello, well read, your panel of reviewers, and to all of you fine folks frequenting the chat. I hope that you're having a great Tuesday night. Yeah, I mean, as great as a Tuesday night can be, certainly. You know, starting the weekly grind. It hasn't hit the halfway point yet. It's not winding down, so let's try to enjoy ourselves. Despite all of that. Aldous is here. He will definitely boost our enjoyment. He says, good evening, all. Good evening, Aldous. Thank you very much for being here. And Nefarious. Hail, nerds. Hail back, nerd. We're going to be talking about your book tonight and can't wait to talk to you a little bit later after we are done giving our opinions. So thank you very much for putting it together and for us to be able to do this review tonight. And Frequency Girl as well. Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Wooster, do you think ye will put Twitless on a train? Ahmed? There are no standards in your country, are there? Just saying. Let's see. Who else do we have? Lots of people commenting. This sounds more like DG music than the usual Carrot intro. Yeah, I thought of going for something a little bit more subdued. I thought the thumbnail spoke to that, so it seemed appropriate to go in that direction. JEC, welcome. Hi, Merry Christmas. I don't know if Merry Christmas is here, but I'm sure it would say hi back if it were. So with that, let's bring on everybody's favorite presents. Let's begin unwrapping them one by one. So what did I get for Christmas today?
Your 2 front teeth, because you're a rabbit.
And let's see. Let's try the next present, because I don't like the idea of getting teeth.
Okay. Ho, ho, ho! Have you been a good little boy this year?
This Christmas sucks. All right, let me try another present.
I would like to remind everybody that since Twitless is here, no one has the right to touch you in your bathing suit region.
Yay! Best Christmas ever.
There you go.
Christmas is saved. So, Twitless, you'll be protecting us from our bathing suit regions, from what I understand.
Oh, really? Okay, that's my role.
Your bathing suit region protector. That's your designation tonight.
I quit.
All right, guys. So everybody was real excited to do this review. There were a lot of conversations in other chats. People had a lot of thoughts on the book, and everybody took to the project right away, thought the concept looked great. And yeah, we're excited to have everyone share their thoughts. So I guess let's jump in. I'll present the crowdfund campaign for MAVRICS, the book that we're discussing tonight. Did fairly well. So what would you guys say? Was this a high profile, medium profile CG project? Where would it land in the spectrum?
I would say it's a low to mid profile. Global Frequency is a channel. I think at the time this launched, they were under 500 subs. Pretty sure of that. So, but they looked at the system, at least how people were promoting, and they really did a good job of working that. Plus, I think the mech aspect really helped and drew some attention to it. But the response was quite excellent for a first time book.
I mean, I would say so. It's a 30K crowdfund total raised, and that's considered a success by CG standards. Typically, a lot of the campaigns do around 5K or less. So definitely in the higher tier of success, if not in exposure. Almost 400 backers as well. And they weren't offering a lot of perks from what I could see. There was a digital download, which is always appreciated, and a basics package, which just gave you the main book and an ash can, I believe, as well, if I'm not mistaken. So
there was more during the course of the campaign that's been dialed down since they went in demand and started fulfillment. Their per backer average of $78 kind of indicates that they had significant sized tiers.
Yeah, I was curious about that because it didn't seem like a high number of backers for the total amount raised. So it would make sense that there were other tiers, but just not appearing any longer. They have a lot of inspirations that they list here. Titanfall, Genlock, 13 Hours, G.I. Joe, Metal Gear Solid. Wow.
I'm a fan of Metal Gear. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Metal Gear. It kind of had a little bit of that flavor in it, though, a little bit. Yeah.
The one thing that I thought it was strongly influenced by for me was not listed, so it just shows that I'm very disconnected from this influence map. But I got a Lost Planet vibe. There's a particular mech in Lost Planet that's really shaped like the mechs in MAVRICS.
Yeah, I remember Lost Planet. That was an Xbox game, wasn't it? Capcom?
PlayStation 3 as well, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And is the mech aspect what attracted all of you to this project specifically?
Yes.
All right. A lot of mech
I
fans.
was a late backer to this. I was more intrigued by the sci-fi, the concept of presenting it, not just a mech, but kind of a sci-fi book with the mech as the backdrop. I guess that's kind of what I assumed it would be, and I guess I kind of got that, just based off the write-up.
Okay. 60 pages as well. So there's quite a lot of content, I guess, in the book. Did all of you get your mech fix from it? Twitless, I'll start with you since
don't start with me.
Fan of mechs.
Don't start with me.
Well, I
right.
can break it down. So there's essentially, I'm going to break down the main book into two sections. Well, really, there's three, arguably four sections, but two of them are primarily story. There's what I would argue is primarily the primary story, and then a backup secondary story that's more of a background. The primary story definitely gives you a quote unquote mech fix. The secondary story is almost the antithesis of that. I found the contrast interesting, to put it mildly. But the first part of the story definitely is as presented, and in many ways knocks it out of the park. The story was I enjoyed the story quite a bit.
What did you think, Finatra? What was your take on the first part of this book, the mech-focused one?
Yeah, it took a bit to get to it. I'm not really a big mech fan, just because it never really caught me. I know there's like a lot of Robotech and Micronauts and all these type of things that've been around for a while that I see, but never really as a kid, never really gravitated to a lot of that. I like the Transformers and Voltron and stuff like that. That's fine and all, but a lot of this, what I enjoyed was really the family kind of aspect of it, or like the team, and everybody kind of having their personality and everybody contributing in their own way in the story, and then kind of matching them up to the mechs. That's all. That stuff is all new to me. It's all kind of new to me. I'm not really big on the mech stuff, but a good story is a good story, and I thought it was fine. It was cool. Did I get my? I thought by the end of the story, I still wanted, even though as much story as it had and it was chock full of plot and character, I still felt like I could have went for a little more though. There's still questions I had, and still unclear to me, and I don't know if I could clearly articulate them because the story's still foggy to me. I'd have to go through it again.
Yeah. We have a surprise guest panelist, everybody. So please welcome
Ooh.
also Dark Gift.
PG.
What's up?
Hey, what's going on, DJ?
Well, not a freaking spoiler, but sorry, DG. But that green mech, the number 4 mech with the painted mouth, that's my dude right there. I love that mech. It's freaking hilarious. It's scary, it's funny, and it's kind of cute. You know what I mean? I like it.
Well, so break it down for us then. So it's you said it's a team book. It's mech focused. What exactly are the dynamics here that you're finding out?
Because you had decided they had the world built in there too, because it was like a dystopian kind of war torn society they were living in. I guess there was a war, or like the mechs are coming back, or like there's a war, they're defending the city, or like I don't really understand. If anybody could help me with that part right there, like because I'm on the beginning, they showed the family, the Middle Eastern looking people. They were like, he was like gathering his kids to step up to the outskirts because the mechs were coming and the fight was going to happen. And I guess it happens more, happens every year or whatever.
I think Twitless has the plot synopsis in hand.
I can fill you in too if Twitless doesn't want to.
We'll need someone to translate once Twitless is done.
Oh, stop.
There was a lot of reading though. There was a lot of reading. I get a little dyslexic on some of that stuff.
In a futuristic world torn apart by war between the forces of Norca and the Unification, a special military operation is underway involving refugees and secret technology. Piloting giant robotic suits, this Spec Op team meets its match when an enemy machine confronts it with superior defense and firepower. In MAVRICS, find out what happens in this epic showdown of metal meets metal.
Aldous, would you like to translate for us, please?
Yeah, so it's set in a future dystopian world where the Federation and the Unification are fighting over territory. It's implied that there was a city, I'm assuming in Mongolia, that was the latest one to be fought over, and the primary story is a mission that's going in to liberate some refugees out of there using a window of opportunity, so to speak. And then using that as the backdrop, there's I think some really creative methodology of building character development on top of that as the structure, with arguably the main character who sees no action in this. It's just developing, and using him as kind of a point of view, which is interesting. It's an interesting take to take your primary, what's obviously your primary hero, and have him not do any action.
It was kind of like The Force Awakens with that one guy, Poe Dameron. What was his name? Poe?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd use that example, but
because it wasn't he held back from the battle and he was sitting there crying and wanting to get into the fight or trying to like help out, and they were denying him.
That was in The Last Jedi, but yeah,
that one. There you go. The Last Jedi. There you go. Yep. Well, they all blended together like a horrible pile of shit. Anyway.
What did you think of the character development, Dark Gift? Do you agree with Aldous' take?
Yeah. For the most part, I'm feeling like I didn't miss much. I'm sorry I was running late. I'm glad I could make it. I thought I wasn't going to be out of work until about 11:30. So.
Oh yeah, that's no problem.
We just started.
Call it? Yeah, I like the setup in the beginning. And between the I guess your main two characters, and then as far as the synopsis of the overall story, I think Twitless and Aldous nailed it. Like you're led to believe like this war has been going on for a bit. I think they even allude to like maybe a nuke was dropped. That's why like there's refugees there, and there's not. It's supposed to be like a cold zone, not a hot zone.
Yeah, well, they referenced that Norca bombed the city at one point, and I think the implication was that at least the way I took it was that if it wasn't nuclear, it was something of that nature that was devastating.
There's something called the Cascade. I don't know if it's mentioned in the book itself, which does get into one of my criticisms, but there is some sort of I think globe-altering event. I think it's alluded to a little bit more in the commentary at the end. But yeah, I think it's called the Cascade, which makes it sound like there's some sort of potentially climate altering or geo graphic altering event that changed and necessitated these types of mechs in the first place.
Well, elaborate. So how's that why would that imply a criticism for the book?
One of my criticisms, well, let me think how I want to structure my one of my criticisms is that this story has a lot of world building. This ties into Finatra's what he was noticing. It's very easy to get lost in this story, and a lot of material that is necessary for understanding what's going on is given to you not in the comic itself, but in ancillary material, whether that is the commentary at the end, side stories, or even a little bit on the campaign page.
I would like it's not difficult to understand what's going on. It's just a lot to keep up with. That's it.
Well, I don't think if I could, I disagree. I agree and I disagree. I agree that definitely it throws you into a world without offering you any explanation, which to a degree I appreciate that there's not this long-winded exposition dump. Contrary to that also is as you're going through it, they're throwing terms at you, whether it's Federation or Unification or Norska, that you have no frame of reference for. And they really, it's a miss in regards to you don't know how to put those pieces together as you're reading the story. They're there, but you don't know how they grate to everything else. If I'm gonna throw that negative out, though, I do want to say this is the world building could definitely use some help, but the characters are very, very well defined. The interaction between the characters is very well done, and if anything, in general, that entire first story, I'm going to say the art does not do the story as much service as it should. If you take out the quote unquote world building aspects and just talk about the character development's done very well in context to the story.
Yeah, I agree. And although I have to say, like with the unification and so on, like you kind of pick up on it. Like at least I did. Like I started to realize he's making like references to like the Axis powers and the Allies. Unfortunately, you don't know who these countries are, right? Like you don't know what countries are making up these groups, which I didn't mind so much because I feel like it wasn't really important at this point in the story.
No, I agree. I think it would just add, if you would have taken like let's say a page and even done a map or a blurb. Please. Or something that elaborated on the state of the world, like, just do a blurb up at the top. And you don't have to do this in like text block narration format where it's just info dump. You can just show even a montage of, cities burning and give me a quick.
Kelsey Shannon did an excellent job of this in Nora Saga, where there's an over-the-shoulder shot of Nora looking at like a map, or like there's another character I think they're looking at a map, and the map actually shows the world, and the map is also being used in the story at the same time. And so the map has a bunch of information for you, but narratively speaking, you're also kind of like the character is in fact looking at that map. So it kind of does two things at once, which is a little bit of lore building, a little bit of like literally looking over the shoulder to character looking at that world. It's very cleverly done, and it uses the language of comics very effectively. So that's the type of thing where you don't have to just have text boxes doing narration dumps. You can work in the language of comics and teach your audience about the world in a very organic way. And I really like it when, like I said, Kelsey Shannon I think is really good at it.
I guess I'm a little different there because I kind of like when things start off small and contained and then build outwards as the story goes on. For just what popped in my head first, like a quick example would be like the John Wick movies, right? The first one is just like him and like a mafia group. And then as the series goes on, as the movies go on, like this whole world opens up and you learn it as you go. And I'm cool with that. That's just me. That's just me.
The contrast to that would be, okay, in John Wick, when he goes to the hotel, you have no understanding of what the hotel is, but they explain to you what the hotel is. In this, you would never understand what the hotel is, based off of that example. But I think what kind of go back to Twitless is that everything that's like that I'm going to nitpick, like you're talking about, is all related to the world building. The characters are done well. And then once the action starts, I really liked the interaction between the characters. And this is something that I really feel is a huge positive for this. The relationships and the dialogue between the characters felt organic. It didn't feel like forced at all. I thought when they're in combat, what they're saying to each other, and as the progression goes through. And so when I say that the art didn't do service, there's some really good moments in that combat sequence. And if anything, it's a little panel heavy. They could have maybe cut out a panel or two, because there's a couple panels that I don't think add to it that are just art. Where I think you could have done like overlays where they're doing some of the camera shots and stuff like that, where it's almost just, for lack of a better term, some art porn maybe.
So I'm going to push back just a little bit on the character writing, because I actually saw that as a bit of a weakness. And the reason I had was that it seemed a bit, and it wasn't like, oh my gosh, it was a deal breaker. It really wasn't. But there was a moment, I think it was actually the locker room scene, where it seemed a bit typical. And it also seemed a little bit, especially with the Jester character, it felt like they were pushing things into almost a cartoonish territory. Like the character's like, I hate yellow food. And it was like one of his defining characteristics. And his other defining characteristic was he made like pervy jokes. And that's the character that the story essentially decides to mark for destruction. And
which is tropey. But I didn't see that coming. I said, "Oh, okay. All right, now we're dealing with pretty much regular story beats here." When that happened,
like,
I was kind of relieved.
Food, and I'm like, "Why?"
I knew that was that shit was a freaking foreshadowing jokes and like character development and stuff like that. That's because I knew those jokes. I was like, I guess he's gonna mention this later on in the fight.
Well, going back to what I was saying is like, so when it starts off, you have those text boxes, and you kind of think the story's being told from one of the characters' point of view, and you just don't know which one. And like to find out later at the end that the whole time the quote unquote narrator of the book is this secret weapon, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought they revealed that really, really well, to be honest with you. So the fact that it was the computer that was giving you these random bits and pieces of information about the characters made a lot more sense once you got to that point, So I don't know.
The creators are very clever, and they're very passionate about what they're doing. I have to give them full props for that. But I do have to say though, this book is probably going to wind up on the bottom of my list for one simple reason, because of the character things. Mother, the main character, the leader of this little battalion, doesn't like fence sitters apparently. So.
I noticed that.
I mean, this is a minor.
Keyed right in on that, didn't you, DG?
I was like, is this a dig, Neff? Is this a dig?
Yeah, I knew a joke was coming. I was like, yeah, something's coming. Yeah, that was. I thought about you too.
Arrogant Ape did enjoy the characters. He says each character has a well-illustrated, defining feature that complements their nickname. Jester with a smile, Cold Shoulder has an actual blue shoulder carried over to their mechs. All right, so yeah, we did focus a lot on how the
story. The story has, and again, this is another thing I'll give to the credit of the creators. They imbued their story with symbolic depth, but imbuing a story with symbolic depth doesn't mean that this doesn't equate to the story is good, but it is definitely something to note in terms of the story has additional layers to it, and that's something that does deepen the appreciation of the story, and they deliberately put that in there in many places.
Right. Well, and I think you touched on it earlier. In I don't know if you want to call it a director's commentary or a creator's commentary that Neff provided following the two lead stories before the art plates. He talks about it's one of the things he really wanted to put across, that war is personal, and in addition to all of the philosophical discussion that he's maybe trying to reach for, that I don't know if he fully grasped completely, in the concept of the global story, he definitely hit the personal cost of war, because you get maybe not invested in the characters, but you at least have an understanding of who the character is as a character, and then there are characters that die, which I thought was a nice touch. I do agree that they are tropey, but at the same point, when you're dealing with a realm like this and you're doing something like this, it's so hard not to have any aspect of tropism come into it, because
Honestly,
you're
I
going to
found
have
that
a Hudson
refreshing.
character, you're going to have a Vasquez character, you're going to have a
Yeah.
Frost. It's just
it wouldn't
the
have bothered
reason
me.
that
It would-
works is it's been done over and over and over again.
It wouldn't have bothered me, but I felt like it leaned into like tropes that I've seen, and I'm personally, again, this is a personal thing. It leaned into tropes I am a little personally irritated at, with some of the girl bossness, as it were. The lead of the squad is Mother. They're literally going into battle with Mother, and she's like, got to put the boys into line. And I was like, I'm a little tired of that particular trope. And it's like, to be honest, it's a trope that we're getting a whole lot of recently. So
No, well, I'll give you. I'll say this: when they started showing the they're like she was Storm 0, and then it was like Storm 3, Storm 4, right? Like they're like not call signs, but they're designations.
Designation. Yep.
I was like, I swear, if this cold shoulder chick is her number one, then I was gonna be with you on that. But when it was the dude, when it was Hotshot, that was her number one. I was like, okay, at least they're like, they're not going full on girl
Well, I mean,
boss.
they did have the
Right.
shower scene where she literally did the arm curl. And doing,
I assumed the arm curl, well, and it was explained that the arm curl was done to make it tasteful, so you didn't have the nudity in the book. But I agree with you to a degree, slightly, Twitless. I think it would have been a little more interesting. But the contrast that was done with the primary character who's back at command, Wendigo, and having him compared to her, that he's showing concern and she's offsetting it, and he's dismissing her ability. He's saying that you're not ready for this. You can't, there's something else. I thought that knocked her down just enough that it worked, and it didn't feel overly powered, like she's this, overpowered
Sue,
Sarah
yeah.
Connor trope that can do everything right. It was here's a more experienced special forces guy saying like, no, this ain't right.
No, I'm sorry. I wasn't using trope as like a dirty connotator. Like I wasn't using it as a negative way. I just like to use simple words.
by the
But
way,
it was refreshing when I seen familiar things happen. I'm like, all right, well, there's some, it's stuff that I was kind of I'm just expecting, but at least there's something there that I'm familiar with, and that was actually comforting when I was reading the book.
in terms of my criticism for the book, it is the lowest on the list, really. So like it was a little minor thing, and I was like, all right, and then it's really not that big a deal.
But yeah, I was gonna say the same thing as Aldous said too. As far as having Hotshot as her number one, the offset being the other guy, Wendigo. Like he knew, like it was almost like he was even more. I don't know if you want to say maybe his instincts or his paranoia or whatever, but it seemed like he was just more in tune with what's been going on in this war, that even from jump, he knew something was off about this.
Right.
And that she was. So like it did show that like maybe her arrogance is her weakness. You know what I mean? Or maybe she's just not as, maybe she's not arrogant. Maybe she's just not attuned or as observant as he is. Like, she has her strengths, he has his. Like they all have their own strengths, and it doesn't come across as.
It was not a deal
Mary
breaker.
Sue-ish.
It was not a deal breaker. Yeah,
I didn't see
have
any
lots of
instance
stuff,
where she was placating him. For example, it was his criticisms were taken in
Well,
stride,
shit.
but
They had to
it
freaking
wasn't-
wait. I'm sorry. They had to wait till the freaking kid died, and then send him in. Oh, the kid died. Now we really got to figure out what we're doing here.
Well, so we talked about the world building. We talked about the characterization. What about the actual conflict in the story? Could you walk us through that a little bit, and how effectively was it executed, given that they're in a war-torn dystopian scenario? Was there any urgency actually felt with the mission that they had?
Well, the conflict here seems to be, I don't want to say minor, but it seems to be like a setup to like the bigger conflict, like it or maybe maybe not a foreshadowing or anything like that, but it's definitely, because they talk about like this quote unquote ghost, this demon mech that no one's ever seen before, but there's rumors and stuff.
Ghost in Kiev.
Right, yeah, right. Like, you know, so like it's been like it just seems like this was supposed to be like a standard op, or you later kind of find out that all these are all chess moves made by this colonel or whatever the main
Thunderbolt
guy.
Ross.
Yeah, but in the heat of the moment and reading the story up until you get to the point where you find out it's all a bunch of chess moves, it just seems like it's supposed to be a standard op, and then this action takes place and it kind of shows off this adversary, this supposed myth that actually is not a myth, and so you kind of know something's coming up because obviously the dude is back at base going, no, something's wrong. So if he keeps saying something's wrong, you know something's probably friggin' wrong, right? So, what you call it? But yeah, so I guess there's a sense of urgency from jump, but it doesn't play out that way. It plays out as like, okay, this is a standard thing. Everybody's kind of like taking it in stride, and then all of a sudden shit goes down, and we get to see basically the mechs in action. They all have their own little, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? I just worked for 2
Speciality.
hours.
Each one kind of had their own speciality.
Specialty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, you know, it's kind of more of like a presentation, more so than like an actual like. There's something on the line. Obviously, their lives are on the line, but there's no bigger loss than like actually like losing 1 or 2 of the soldiers at this point. You know what I mean? So
Did you feel that way as well, Twitless? Did it rely on too many tropes in the general story overall?
Here is my issue with the book, and here's my biggest issue. And to me, I don't see a way around this one. So I'm curious as to see what the panel has to say on it. I have a big structural reservation for this book because at the end of the day, no matter how we look at it in terms of the moments themselves, when we look at them in totality, when we look at the sum of the parts here, what we have here is an intro and half of a fight scene for our 60 some odd pages.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, that's a hard pill for me to swallow for a book like this. And it ties into the broader issue I have with with a particular approach to the storytelling used here, which is the cinematic type of storytelling. And I think it touches on several of the issues that have been alluded to here. If ISOM is a television pilot, at least it was a complete pilot. And what I got here was, and this is something that Neff actually mentions in the commentary. This started off as a screenplay and a story that was too big. Essentially, it's actually alluded to in the side story with a little painting there, where there's a little meta commentary. So I think Neff and the creators know that they're telling a story that's too big, but noticing that is not enough to overcome that central elephant in the room, which is the fact that for what is being given here, it's half a fight scene. It's not even they're in the middle of the fight scene and the book ends. I have real reservations about that.
I agree with most of what you're saying. This is one of the things that irritates me. If you're talking about a release schedule of once a year or once every 18 months, I don't like to see this. Tell me a complete story. This will work in 7 issues where everything is fleshed out and there's full story and I can get an omnibus. But to do it this way, I don't think worked. In addition to that, you tell half of the action story, and when Dingo is getting ready to go into the action, and then you slam on the brakes and you do the secondary story, which is an exposition story about the creation of the AI that they're fighting. And I'm making an assumption there, but it's the contrast is so incredibly stark.
Yep.
To go from this deeply, maybe not deeply, but this character driven, where you've spent time, you've invested in these characters, to a very cold, visceral description of what essentially comes down to the backstory for the AI. That just the 2 pieces didn't work together. The one might have worked more than the other separate, but together they just it's too different. The flow was too different. I think this would have been better suited if you would have completed the one story, whether it was the AI structure and gone a little bit, and that needed to be thinned out with exposition a little bit and ramped up. Again, the kind of the consistent issue here. I have some issues with the panel selection on a lot of pages. I mean, you know what? A lot's the wrong way to put it. There's several pages that I think the panel selection could have been dialed down.
So let me radiate a little outside of my central point there. So there's another story. I completely agree with all this in the sense that if you want to tell a story like this, the release schedule has to be different. So it's not just the story itself; it's how the story is packaged. So there's a manga series called Gantz, which is very heavily action focused at nighttime, and during the day, like they do some of the plot stuff. But during the nighttime scenes, when all the characters are fighting giant monsters and aliens, it'll go for issue after issue, essentially, installment after installment, 20 pages after 20 pages of just pure action beats. But because of the release schedule for it, they can, I think, get away with it a little bit more. But for a release schedule that is described as a graphic novel, see, the idea of graphic novel implies you're going to get some measure of completeness. And so there's a big difference between serialized storytelling and, you know, graphic novelization. And that's, I think, one of the major missteps here. Taking radiating one layer back from that, the real issue here that leads to what we have is the panel budget is being spent very cinematically, but that's not necessarily a good idea for the structure of comics. And there's some I'm backed up by some people, some experts in the field who mentioned that, Will Eisner being one. But the idea here, right, if you go to the very beginning, it takes about, I think, 4 pages to do essentially a scene setting. And it's and you could tell, I think, that the creators were approaching this from like almost a shot by shot kind of, and then
it's a storyboard. It's a storyboard.
Yes, exactly. But the problem there, and this is my problem with that approach to comic book storytelling, is that it leans more into the medium of film than it does into the medium of comics. And like I said, Will Eisner has talked about this, and I've got a quote that I think is relevant here. He says, in film, for example, sound and dialogue do not occupy visual space. They are heard at another level. Imitating film in a comic sequence can make the sequence hard to read. And Eisner's broader point is the fact that the pacing of film is very different from the pacing, because a pacing of film is contiguous, whereas the pacing of comics is fragmentary. And so they lend themselves to different types of storytelling. And because of the choices being made here, the panel and page budget gets spent way before the end of a completed story can happen. And that leaves us with half a fight scene, which is very unsatisfying for an audience. And like I said, that's very hard for me to get around. As much as there's lots of interesting things going on, as much as there's interesting depth in the characters at times and the symbolic depth, there's a lot of symbolic depth, like numbers on mechs.
There's a lot of heavy metaphor that's being done, and I really appreciated it. And that's one of the highlights of this is it has its flaws for sure, but the depth that's there's talent in understanding the scope of what they're trying to do, and there's talent of the layeredness. It's the layered cake methodology, right? They get all that, and the team executed it very well. Again, I felt the art was not up at times for the story, but I also think I can't the structure of the action up front and then the exposition following it just didn't work. And I think there's an inherent problem there. And that goes beyond what you're talking about, Twitless. You're talking about the structure and the layout. It just felt like two things that were just jammed together and put in there. And I really appreciated Neff's explanation in there, because I think I understand what he was trying to do, but it didn't work for me with the way that it was structured.
I agree with 2 things that you guys have been saying. One, if the release schedule of these books are going to be like a year apart, yes, then I would agree that ending in the middle of the battle would be a bad move. Though it has worked in other circumstances, but again, you're usually getting the book either like a month or 2 or 3 later. You know what I mean? So there's not that much time to wait, for that.
They're also not marketed as graphic novels. Like if it's marketed as a floppy, you're programmed to. I'm only getting a little piece of this. When you get a graphic novel, you're more programmed to receive a completed story. It's part of how it's being packaged to you.
Right.
But that's a general problem. I'm not gonna slam
Right.
Mavericks too much for that, because that's a problem I would say with easily 60 to 70% of the books that I've gotten.
And I'm sorry to cut you up, but I just want the other thing I agree with is the cinematic approach as compared to the structure of a comic book. That's literally one of the things that I've been literally dealing with Hunting Alice, is because Albie comes from the TV Hollywood script writing world, and it's just been really rough trying to at a certain point I had to just take over and say, listen, I'm just going to fix this fix it myself, and that's what's taking so long. But without getting into all that, I'm just saying, so I get it. I understand, there's just certain things that when I'm reading it, I'm like, this would make a great scene in a TV show. It would absolutely make a great scene in a TV show. How do I put that onto a page though? You know what I mean?
I got that feeling too.
Yeah.
This happened with Lady Alchemy, the first draft. So they the original team, you can actually find some of the artwork that they made, and the book was supposed to be 50 something pages, but when you look at the finished artwork that was done for that first version of the story, they burn 12 pages to get to a nightclub scene, which is just an intro bit. And if you've spent over a fifth of your panel budget and you're still in intro scenes, you're spending your panel and page budget incorrectly. And so again, with comics have a lot of different, they have a different language, okay? Because they're not contiguous. Comics is an art of subtraction as much as it's an art of putting down what's on the page. It's an art of taking things out. And so cinema, when people think about television and cinema, they're often thinking in these very contiguous scenes. And there's a lot, it goes into the types of panels you get. Scott McCloud talks about whether you have moment to moment or action to action panels. And a lot of cinematic storytelling loves to spend a lot of time in those moment to moment kind of action beats, or not action beats, which is here's a panel and here's a panel of the guy 1 second later. And let's stretch that out for there's an entire page in this story, if I can get, is pretty critical.
I like how Twitless got angry and then he just got a little bit passive aggressive.
There's an entire page
here.
No,
I get what Twitless is saying, because again, one of the pages for that I'm dealing with, it's she writes he nods and glances, and then they nod back, and it's how do you draw a nod and make it convey what you're writing here on the page?
There's an entire
you could do it, but it would take like Twitless is saying, it would literally half the page or a whole page would be just little no talking, no action, just two guys looking at each other, head nodding to each other in acknowledgement.
You got to use the hands and body.
Although it does accomplish more than this, there is an entire page of this story that is allotted to a guy handing another guy a cup of coffee, and the page does accomplish more than handing the cup of coffee, but it does kind of again strike you of, wow, we spent an entire page of our 60-page budget, a guy giving another guy coffee.
Yeah.
And you see what I mean? So again, that's that cinematic type of storytelling creeping in. Now,
that page was okay. That page was okay.
It reminded me of a crime
because they're talking, and you're getting to realize that they're friends, and there's a whole relationship building, or at least revelation to the audience of who these two guys are, what they are to each other.
It does illustrate my point, though, in terms of if you took this is math at the end of the day. If it took you 4 pages, right, to get to the opening setting, all right, scene, which I believe was a splash page, and then we spend another page on coffee, that's 5 pages out of 60. Okay, we're burning through pages already.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happens when you think. We live in a culture now.
But I think you're nitpicking that one page. I'll give you the 4, but that one page.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
I say it was a better example of what you're talking about is when Heavy Rain is delivered to the site. The panel starts off, it's the plane flying in, and then it's the load operator in a red background, and then a green light, and then the mech drops, and then it shows the cable breaking off, and then it's heavy rain has hit the ground, and then the squad's forming up, and then there's more dialogue. That should be cut down. I mean, 3 panels easily could be cut from that page.
Yeah, that's
and
a better example.
And
yeah.
you could merge that page with some of the info from the following page, because then it gets to be heavy again. And that's kind of the thing, is there does seem to be some dialogue that's included only because the panel exists. Overall, here's the thing. I agree with all those points. I still think that first story works the way it's constructed. Are there issues with it? Absolutely. But the story works. And that is an accomplishment, because there are issues with it, but it does work.
Yeah.
I'm halfway there, but the problem is because it ended at the half. It's halfway through the fight. They're literally in mid combat. It's not even a battle. It's literally one fight between one combatant, and we are literally just about halfway through with it.
Right.
And I'm like, and this is 60 pages. I'm sorry, that is I'm having a hard time getting over that hump. I see the positives here. I do
it.
I want to like this. I wanted to like this so much, but when I hit that wall and I realized, oh my gosh, 60 pages, half a fight scene.
Well, I kind of agree. Like,
ouch!
It took
This is a
while.
problem. This is a serious problem.
It took about to the 14th page. I thought that a couple too many pages about that time before I felt like the story was getting warmed up. But yeah, I think it could have.
So let me mention this way. Back in the day,
benefited from.
I do.
Condensing
I don't know. I like how it ends with the dude walking up to his suit, and the other guys like hook him up to Nemesis, and then I get what and I know Aldous has an issue with the side story. I look at it more as an epilogue, right? It's like it takes you back before the events of the book, and it tells you what Nemesis is. And I'm kind of curious. I want to talk. I don't want to go too much into spoilers here, but we go backstage. Aldous mentioned something. I feel like he's thinking that something is playing both sides of the coin here, and I want to hear his thoughts on that when we go backstage. But because I didn't think of that, but that's actually a good hypothesis that I want to pick his brain at. But I don't know. It ended with him getting ready to go into the battle. For me, again, now do I have to wait a year before I see him go into the battle? Now then, I might join Twitless on that argument. You know what I mean? Like so, but I don't know when book 2 is supposed to be coming out. Do we even have a time frame on that?
So I have to disagree with Wooster. It is in the middle of the fight. Okay, the final scene of them in the battle is basically the enemies charging at each other. So if the fight had been completely concluded, I might give you that. But it's as far as I estimate it, it's in the middle of the fight. The fight is not concluded. He says, "I'm going to go join my comrades in battle." He didn't say, "I'm going to go avenge them."
Right. They're in the midst. They've reformed, and the ghost is charging them, and then it cuts back to Wendigo, and he's in command center, and he says, "That's it, I'm going." And then it cuts, and then the colonel says, "Make sure he's connected to the Nemesis network." And it shows him in front of his mech, and that story ends, and then you get the prologue. That's actually an epilogue.
This is a broader commentary, and this is where I can dial down a little bit of my criticism to an extent. But this is a broader commentary on our industry, because I don't think that Mavericks is the only comic that runs into this issue. They're not alone in this. We're in a culture now where back in years ago, people who wrote comics spent a lot of their time reading them, but we live in a culture now where people who write comics spend a lot of their time watching television. And I noticed that influence map, when they did their pitch, there was very light on mentioning comic book inspiration, although I believe there was the artist mentioned some art inspiration, but the story had very little comic book inspiration. It was very heavy on television inspiration, and I think that does heavily inform the type of structure the storytelling.
I think you're reaching on that. I mean, part of that is marketing too. That's on his campaign page. So he's saying, if you're interested in these things, pick this book up.
No,
I think you're conflating marketing with referential.
I'm not, because at in the commentary, when you again, I have a quote. When Mavericks began pouring out of me, I tried to write it down as a screenplay, but with each line it grew. Instead of progressing toward the ending I had chosen, closing in on the inevitable conclusion like a well-played game of chess, it defied me. That's when I realized something was different. Mavericks was not a straightforward story, and the 3-act structure was so involved that I couldn't tell it as a feature-length film without bringing in Peter Jackson. I began to indulge the idea of doing it as a TV miniseries or as something on Netflix, but the more room I afforded it, the more the story of Mavericks decided to grow. So this is something that is very much a part of not just the marketing, but how the story originated to begin with. In fact, I believe it was the artist who actually was the one. It was Garrett Gabby who said, let's do a comic. So we very much have, I think, a filmmaker mindset that's making a comic because, you know, making a film is obviously way more intense.
It really feels like you want to make that point, and you're construing things. I mean, I don't even think you need to go that far. I understand you want to make that point, but I don't think you need to go that far. And I don't think I don't understand the context of that to the story. I mean, it's got, the book has issues for sure. It's a really good first time book, I think. And yeah, it does come from somebody that is an amateur, a first timer making a book. But I when you're talking about like a TV referential position or something like that, I don't see that, because I see these same problems in people that are quote unquote huge comic fans. I think it's just modern storytelling in general. It's first time. You've never done a comic before, and you want to tell your story, and you tell your story in a way that, you know, is just it flows out of you, quote unquote, like he said, which is this way. I don't think comics is special for sure, but I don't think it has anything to do with TV. I think it's just how you tell a story.
Okay. So I guess we can move on from that one particular point. It sounds like we've had a lot of discussion about it.
Calm down, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could real quick too, I would like to compliment the team on the Ashcan. The anthology was really, I thought, better in some ways than the book. It consists of 3 stories, which are The Old Ways, which was probably my favorite. Wendigo, that gives some background on the main character, which was probably the weakest. And then New Lives, which kind of gives you a little bit more background to the backup story, or what I'm calling the backup story about the Nemesis Network. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I still got to read that. I haven't had a chance to read it. It looks pretty good though.
So total package, I guess. Finatra, like what was your takeaway going through it from start to finish? Did you feel satisfied, or are you
it was
kind
fine.
of in alignment?
It was fine,
but there was a tease aspect to it.
Yeah, it did end kind of cold. It was a cold ending, and that's how I felt. Like I was like, damn, just as he had a point by being a graphic novel, it should have been kind of a contained story, and you could have had it a lot more to build up for the next one. But there should have been some kind of a closure. I would say I had the digital copy, and I could tell right away that the physical copy is the one you want to get your hands on. You want to read it, have it in your hands and read it, because I could tell that the digital wasn't serving it. It wasn't serving it enough justice. But the when you opened it, like the color palette just started off kind of with the pink kind of tones and stuff like that. Or when I started, that felt kind of good though. I did like the that kind of soft approach to the beginning of it, and the art to me, I think a lot of these wide panels of there was like a scene with like the radio and an ashtray and a pack of cigarettes. I was like, I like that panel for some reason. It just seems very familiar to me. And there's like but I like the art, man. The art wasn't bad, man. I think I would have said that it didn't serve it well, but I think that it was fine. It was fine.
Well, when I say it didn't serve it well, the sequential storytelling aspect did not serve the story well.
I noticed. Yeah.
The art is, I mean, individual art. Like, okay, like a panel, the panels. There's some minor issues, but there's no major issues. It's fine. It's the sequential, the page structure, that the aspect of that art, the sequential art has issues. Mainly, like I said, with panel selection.
Yeah, I do have my criticisms about that, but at the same time, just freaking laying out a book is a pain in the ass.
I wanted to say a few words about the artwork, if I could. So Garrett Gabby's artwork reminds me of, I think James Decaux was mentioned. But I was also a little reminded of Kenneth Rocafort, and those are both compliments. I found the line work to be kind of gritty, but also a little bit playful, which helps balance the subject matter without
There you
making it
go.
too grimy in tone.
Yeah.
There was also some satisfying double-page spreads and splash panels. Robot designs were satisfying. Giant walking tanks are always cool. That's just a fact.
No,
I
you
love
talked,
the green
you talked
back
about
there.
the scratch. Like I don't know if you said scratchiness. Scratchiness was the first thing that I thought of, and there was just a little bit of Guy Davis at times here and there, that I saw in some of the panels, and I kind of dig that. I dig that look, but it wasn't consistent, and I think that was like a small mark against it on the art.
I'd also like to comment on the coloring. The coloring had this sort of like inky painted quality to it, and I think it was influenced by graffiti art, which also gave some energy to the composition as opposed to sometimes because a war comic could be very dreary, and so the coloring kind of added some energy and little upbeatness, like a little bit of punkish kind of that graffiti energy to it. I think.
Yep.
On that, if I could just interrupt you real quick,
Yeah, sure.
that first page is beautiful printed in the printed copy.
Yeah, I could tell. Like, it just feels way better. Like, I wish I did have it in my hands.
Yeah, it's the nice contrast, like Twitless just said, but the printed copy is absolutely beautiful.
Go to the 6th page. The 6th page is freaking that color palette. Yeah, I mean, you could talk about the pink palette, but it looks good, man. Yeah, I like that. It gives it a certain tone, a certain flavor. It's not too dreary. Yeah, it's looks. Yeah, it doesn't really make it so gloomy, but it does look pretty dreary down there. And the composition, I like it. I like all the perspectives and all there. I didn't have a problem with anything. You can say whatever about the art, but everything is serviceable. It works.
The violets and indigos there, I think, are very James Decoe. I'm reminded of Godzilla: The Half-Century War, for example. And they get very well-respected artists. So that if you're being compared, I think, to Decoe and Rocafort, those are positives.
Cool. Yeah, I guess. Do we want to get to final thoughts and then bring on our creators? Have a few questions for them. Dark Gifts, why don't you start us off?
Talking about the physical copy, I mean, the book itself it's a solid book. Like, no complaints on like the production value of it. Since we were talking about the actual physical compared to the digital. No, I mean,
It's Mike. Brutal.
I do know what I'm talking about, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I think the book, for criticism, it's a bit talky. I do the same. If I was writing a book, I'd probably do the same thing, and that's a situation on its own. But for the most part, I think it's very, very talky, and not enough banter back, and not enough creating conflict with. There's conflict, but like I don't know the way I kind of like man, you can stir up so much conflict and like with like miscommunications or different motives or I think he's a little more conflict with the dialogue if you're going to use that much if you're going to have that much dialogue there should be as much conflict within that dialogue, banter, fun play, and I think a lot of the jokes for me they didn't really land because it was just like with the kid, yeah, I wanted to choke his ass sometimes. I'm like, shut up, kid. Like, and then when he died, I'm like, yes. I'm like, fucking fuck.
Well, before it does break, I forgot to mention, like, yeah, the cover is, I mean, every little aspect of this cover, like the title, the mech, the dude. I thought it was a dude, but now knowing the character, it's the chick.
Mother, yeah.
It's all embossed. It's really nicely done.
I thought it was. Oh, okay.
But what you call it? But as far as like my overall thoughts on the book, I wasn't as critical as everybody else was. I mean, yeah, it has its faults. I think like some of the stuff could have been condensed down a couple of pages because you can feel that this was supposed to be in another medium at some point. But overall, I enjoyed it. Again, I'll probably agree with a lot more of the criticism if I have to wait a year and a half for the next book to come out. But for the most part, I'm cool with it.
Can you,
as far as the art goes,
yeah, comment a little bit so that Booster can stop calling me stupid in the chat. So
Why is he calling you stupid?
because I was supposed to ask the artist about the art, and you're the artist here.
Oh, the art itself. I mean, I think it's the style of the artist. I think it lends itself. There's something familiar about it, and I can't place who what it's reminding me of. But there are certain things like like the kid, right? Like they just put dots for eyes, where everything else is kind of drawn in a more serious fashion.
Mm.
So like that kind of like takes me out of it a little bit. But for the most part, I mean, he's very good at sequential art. The detail on it, for the most part, I mean, the only thing I can say is maybe there's a lack of consistency on certain parts, where certain maybe things where he was rushing through. Like if you look at this this guy's face here, it's like beautifully done, right? But then you look at like his face there, and it's a little more just not as detailed, you know. But like,
I would say
that's like nitpicking to a.
I would say there was
point.
2 curse words that you could have just left out. There was 2. You didn't even have to curse in this book. There was a moment, and they fell right on the same
that
page.
has nothing to do with what I'm saying about.
No, I'm just it's kind of tangential. It was something tangential before I forget. I wanted to mention that as a critique because I was thinking it's a fine YA novel, but then like you threw like fuck in there and some like probably bullshit or something like that. I was like, you didn't really need to do that.
You know what it is? I feel like maybe he.
No, whatever.
I feel like the artist enjoyed drawing certain characters more than he enjoyed drawing the others.
I love Storm 4. I think Storm 4 is
I feel like he like really enjoyed drawing Thunderbolt, but maybe not so much Wendigo. You know what I mean? Because it was just like. Yeah, like the details on some of the like on Mother, on Thunderbolt, on the mechs, on the main guy, I forget his name now, of the refugee, like the leader of the refugees. All those guys were drawn superbly, and then the rest were kind of just kind of drawn there, so.
Okay. Aldous, would you like to give us your final impressions?
Yeah, I mean the print quality, as has already been said, this is what I would expect for a $25. I mean, in the package that this came with, it was the printed book, magazine, oversized, with an ash can that was also oversized, with a ton of extras, from little standees to stickers to bookmarks to pins. The extras aside, the whole package was very much worth my investment. The book itself was what I would expect for the price point, as far as quality of print and all that. Minor issues, there's some, like I said, the sequential art, there's pages that they don't really guide your eye very well. It's more of a shot by shot by shot. There's a double page spread in a mech bay that really doesn't do much. Double page spreads are, they should be used sparingly and for important things. And it's just kind of this establishing shot, and it doesn't feel right, especially when like 4 pages later, it's a heavily clustered. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels on this page, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels on the previous page. So you got 16 panels on 2 pages, and then previously 3 pages before that you had 4 pages before that you had a double page spread of the bay. So that's my issue, is the sequential art I just felt was a little off with the pacing. I think it could have been done a little bit better. The printed colors look great. It's a very impressive first time effort overall. That's my take.
Twitless, would you like to cap us off?
Actually, I've got something to a particular panel. I think this ties into Aldis's points that he was making. When it comes to, again, the language of comics, this is a cool looking scene. But when it comes to what exactly is happening, I noticed that there were a few pages where I had to kind of study them or reread them multiple times, and also get some of the director's commentary before I could kind of understand what was going on. I'm still a little unclear as to what is going on in this sequence. Like, so the evil mech is clashing with the knife of our good guy here, and I think that sword slid down into that little arm guard. But then when she says he's not invincible, there's like an explosion, and did she use her gun to shoot the sword? These are the types of things where I'm like, I think that I think they sometimes get laid at the feet of the artist, but without reading the script, I don't know if this is an issue with the sequential art storytelling is in the script or it's the interpretation of the art. But again, that plays into some of the cinematic observations we've been making. Overall, this book has a lot of potential. I think these creators have a lot of potential, and they're very clearly invested, passionate storytellers who have an entire universe to tell you. And I think there's a lot to get excited about with that. And there's also giant tank mechs. So those are the positives. Those are the pluses, in addition to some of the art things we've noticed.
I like this Preston Acevedo piece right here. It's fucking gorgeous.
The big problem I have, as I've mentioned before, and it makes me
or is that Rob Willis? Sorry.
It makes me hesitant to recommend it, is the fact that I feel like it's half a story. And that's a real hard thing for me to get around for recommendation. Now, I want these creators to, I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm willing for these creators to like come at me and say, hey, next installment, it's way better than the first. We learned all those lessons. But I kind of need that. I need to know that I'm going to be getting completed stories, or at least some version of completeness moving forward, or that's going to make me that's what I need in terms of getting interested in further installments.
What you call it? Neff says that the sword cut into the ammo box, which I did piece that together myself just from seeing it. But I mean, I guess I don't see why you wouldn't.
Let's not leave them in the back any longer. We went longer than I expected. We ended up with a bigger panel than I anticipated to, but so let's see if the creators can give Tootless what he needs, what he really needs. Please, everybody, welcome
Life
and Freak Girl. Hey guys,
welcome.
What's up, guys?
Hey,
hello. Thank you for being here.
Guys?
Sorry to keep you in the back so long.
How's it going?
How are you doing?
Doing all right tonight. Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, it's amazing to have you here. Thank you. A lot of discussion from your book. People were really excited for the project, and I think there was a lot of things that caught people's attention up front. And a lot of discussion got generated from it. I think there were a lot of questions that got raised about where you were going with the story, if you intended to have it be a movie script, or you wanted to reformat it into something more comic focused. I think there's just some clarification that probably some of the people on the panel would hope to get.
I took some notes.
Cool. We love providing those.
Twitless, you had very good points. Aldous, you too. Thanks, Dark Gift. Finatra, your points were all appreciated. This is half a book. This is a cliffhanger, and it's book one of a 2-part arc. And the second half is considerably larger. We could only really justify doing 60-something pages to see if we had an audience for it. So I broke it where I thought would be a decent cliffhanger point for people to go, I want the next one. Book 2 concludes this story arc. You find out what happens to the Red Mech, Harrison. The Wendigo comes in, they have their big fight. The exfiltration occurs. I'm all right, but this introductory storyline concludes in book 2. You also do have a point that it's going to take a while for us to get there. The artist isn't particularly fast. This is his first comic. It's my first comic too. So we are waiting. Well, you will be waiting for a while, for about another year, for the second book to come out. However, that said, that concludes that arc. So if you enjoy book 1 and 2 together, then we'll be making larger graphic novel size stories moving forward. But we wanted to see if financially this was viable.
Right.
If investment wise, this was something that we could pursue. You're right. It was initially a script, so there is a big cinematic feel. Translating cinema to comic book is tough. You have to learn an entirely different language. I did a lot of reading. I started with Scott McCloud. We read Euro books. We read manga. We didn't list any comics in our inspiration because there aren't a lot of mech books. So a lot of people out there who like mechs are going to be more familiar with like Gundam
Right,
or
and like Aldous said, that was kind of a
marketing,
choice
right.
for the campaign to try and what is this like? If you have interest in these things, and since there are not a lot of mech comics, we kind of grabbed from more popular.
Right,
ones.
honestly, when I looked at Jose Garcia's Lumina Vox campaign page, I really liked how he used some of his, if you like these properties, then you'll like this book. And I was like, oh, that's great marketing. So I'm just going to steal that, which I totally did.
You don't want to pigeonhole yourself with just a comic book. You want to reach other people who are familiar with other things than comics.
Yeah, and you want to try and like interest them in what's this weird mix of IPs that you're saying are your influences gonna produce. So I thought the idea for the map was great. We could have done a lot of storytelling with one little insert. So I'm definitely gonna do something with that for book 2. What else here? The Cascade, there will be elaboration on that. It is the idea of this book was it's a slow burn. It's like the beginning of Predator or Aliens. But like you said, that's very cinematic and might not work very well for the beginning of a graphic novel. It will if the graphic novel is 220 pages, right? Or something to that degree where you have that page real estate to build. Because I don't think that the pacing, at least from what my editor gave as far as feedback and most of the people that I've spoken to, I don't think the pacing itself was the problem. It was the fact that what was paced, the action that you got led up to a point where it didn't feel fulfilling because of the cliffhanger. And I get that.
Yeah, I was actually gonna mention before the reviewers jump in with questions. So the pacing, I kind of know it sounds like you're redefining a genre because, like you said, there aren't a lot of mech comics, and mech anime tends to be very, gradual plotting, and it takes a while for things to really build up. And it sounds like you were in your first effort trying to translate that to the comic page. And now I'm wondering, now that you've been through that exercise, what are the advantages and disadvantages? What lessons do you feel like you've picked up having gone through that exercise and doing it, for the first time, kind of blazing new ground here?
I think definitely when you're introducing something like mecha anime to a more Western comic book audience, you have to do a lot more distilling and making the story very potent and very tight so that there aren't too many wasted panels. Even though we were going for Otomo style stuff, or like you mentioned James Heron with like landscapes, or Euro comics like Garrett's influenced by Mobius. We're going for like a lot of negative space, a lot of gradual build. American audiences might not dig that, or I should say more traditional audiences that prefer Western comics might not dig that. So you have to really concentrate that down to make it more, I don't know, beat heavy, where things are happening more, I don't know, frenetically is the right word, but more definitively, where we have mech action sprinkled in with dialogue. We don't have like a long burn in the beginning where you're building the atmosphere. You have brooding moments in the cockpit with the pilot. If that's not something that really appeals to comic book fans, then that's something that we have to work on. I guess making more potent.
I enjoy it. For your first go, man, it's a lot of work to get stuff like that done. And
Can I? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying it's hard work to get these books done. So you're always going to have something going on.
No, one more thing that I actually did dig, and I think it's not a major thing either way, but I kind of caught on to it, was like the meshing of like the military, like they're like a combination of like grunts and Air Force, like, and I kind of liked how you like played with that a little bit, like their formation, the way they formatted. Some of them were doing like grunt work, and some of them were actually like wingmen. You know what I mean? Like it was
Right.
it was really
Right.
cool, like cool little thing that you did there between combining. I guess like I don't know if you went with the Army or Marines or whatever, but like that like on the ground foot soldier type action with the formation of like pilots, like an Air Force squadron.
After a situation like the Cascade, which we have yet to really plumb the depths of, definitely something that's coming, warfare shifts a lot. Deploying forces in a future like that becomes a much more I don't know, complicated thing than it is now. Not as logistically complicated, like not moving large armies, but for the lack of large armies, for the lack of large platoons of armor and stuff like that, it's warfare is changed. So with it, the machines and the people who engage in warfare, although warfare stays the same, the way they engage in it is different. But there are specialists.
I have an idea. Go ahead, Wolver.
Oh no, go ahead. Tell us your idea first.
Storm 4 plushies.
Yeah,
That
well,
actually-
it's already
Yeah, okay.
Working
we
on
already
a
have
prototype,
the
but
reason you like him so much with that mouth is that
It's
we've
a
already
face.
influenced from Domo-kun, who's like that big brown mascot that they have in Japan, and he's very cuddly. They have plushies of him too. So
Yeah, it looks.
that was the one we
It
were
just has a
working on.
cutesy. It just looks kind of cute, but kind of menacing at the same time. It's a good design to have fun with.
Wilberforce says, how much effect did Garrett have on the pacing of the story? Reading his commentary, Neff seems very verbose, but the story is incredibly well paced. No novelist writing out the script on page. Rather amazing for a first effort.
So I write scripts a lot differently than I talk or than I write. When I write scripts, it is just literally what is in the panel, a basic action, basic character, and the Garrett and I do the layouts together. Our editor had a lot of impact on that. The dialogue itself, I had to learn how to pare it way down because I didn't want to fill bubbles too much or have bubbles filling up panels or filling up pages. One of my big issues is like, you're flipping through a comic and suddenly you hit a page with there's just words everywhere. And I didn't want to do that. So it was an effort in reduction, and I guess I also need to reduce the scope of the storytelling to make it more potent to kind of match that.
Well, you had Eric Weathers to help you out with that one too, which is definitely good. Good decision.
All of the sound effects, though, that's all Garrett. He drew all of that himself.
Cool.
Weathers did a couple of. Did he do any of the ones that look like they're drawn in? That's all Garrett. And
that's cool.
Eric does great with his bubbles. We went back and forth on the lettering quite a bit.
yeah, his lettering was fantastic.
Awesome.
I like that he chose to do the bubbles without
Black borders.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, what inspired you to make this story into a comic when originally you wanted it to be scripted for film?
Oh, originally like I said, the budget to do this it's just not there. Animation's too expensive, and I didn't have anyone that I knew who wanted to front the type of money it would have been necessary to make this into a movie. And it's a story I want to tell, right? And I've always liked comics. I never really thought that I could write a comic because I don't know how to draw comics, right? But then when I was talking to Gary, and he's like, there's a whole script writing process behind it. I was like, all right, well, let me learn. Let me go grab Scott McCloud and sit down and read these books. Let me look at a lot more comics than the 90s stuff that I read when I was like, look, it's Shatterstar. Yay. I loved 90s stuff, and, I had to get more of an education and round out my diet in order to take on a project like this. And I really like the thought of continuing because there's a lot of story here. This is just the first arc, MAVRICS Origins 1 and 2. We've got Evolution and Generations after that, 2 more arcs after this, and there's a lot of content. There's also a lot of side content, little side missions and stories that are self-contained, so you'll appreciate them. All of the one-offs on the next campaign, the 28 to 32 page stories are all self-contained. So I guess really the idea was like, if I can't get the world to participate in making this comic with me, how do I do it myself? And how do I go out and find my audience so that I can get people to hear the story that I have to tell?
I would recommend you start with never talking about Shatterstar again.
What's wrong with Shatterstar?
Are you a fan of Rob? We can Rob Liefeld the Tractor in chat.
That's why I went there, though.
I like Rob.
It's the most like Kraft macaroni and cheese Velveeta prepackaged cheese food shit that you can think of, right?
Yeah, but that's your favorite.
No, that's why I like early 90s comics.
This book though is very unlike 90s comics, would you say? Or
Yeah,
did
it
you
is.
did you try to weave some of that inspiration in, do you think?
I don't know how to write a 90s comic, and when I went back and read a lot of them, they're really bad.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really bad. McFarlane manages to do a decent job, but even that, looking at it, like some of the Spawn stuff doesn't really sit as well. I mean, Max is interestingly told, but it's not the type of storytelling that I wanted for this. Most of the 90s stuff is just very cheesecake and goofball slapstick stuff. So I had to study a lot outside of that little sandbox that I was comfortable with when I was growing up. And that required taking a lot more influences from outside, like Euro comics and manga and, more classical comics that required me to learn that type of storytelling. The balance between intensity and clarity, shit like that. 90s comics were all intensity all the time. But clearly, there's still more work that we have to do working on the layouts, as Aldous was saying. If you didn't like some of the paneling and the transitions, we have to work on the flow. So there's still more to learn.
Do you think you'll abandon though the pacing, the more methodical approach that you want to establish here?
I don't think I will, because that's the way that this story feels like it's going to be told. Right now, when we start up,
Work on tightening it up.
yeah, we are going to work on tightening it up. The second book starts right in the middle of the action, though, but it's going to continue to feel well defined. The moments are going to be like, the beats are all going to be there. You're going to have combat interspersed with things that are happening elsewhere to punctuate that. Every time you get dialogue, you're going to get information, either exposition, organic exposition, or diegetic exposition, or you're going to get pertinent information in the moment that's going to lead characters to taking action. So we're not going to like leave a whole bunch of expository bullshit everywhere. So the pacing is still going to be tight.
I don't know if anyone else wants to jump into questions. I'm just gonna.
I've got one.
Okay.
I think it touches on some things we've talked about, but I'd like to maybe flesh out a little bit this more. There are some thinkers like Terry Gronston and others who have observed that one of the distinguishing characteristics of comics that separate them from film is the fact that the comics page occupies both space and place simultaneously. Yep. So in other words, the layout versus the single frame of the screen. So in your view, what are the main differences between the mediums of film and comics? And what has informed your approach to communicating your story, maybe from a cinematics mindset or translating it to a comics page?
Well, I think I said in the chat earlier, the onus of storytelling in comics is on panels and panel transition. It's how you're budgeting the time into those panels, and page space is the only real estate that you have to tell the story, right? So it comes down to looking at what moments are pertinent. Now, I know you mentioned earlier the page with like the coffee, right? Originally, the handing of that coffee cup wasn't on that page. That beat didn't exist. But it's a pertinent beat, right? So it takes up space. And I think maybe one of the problems that you sense in the comic book right now, the way it is that there's too many moment-to-moment transitions, right? Like in the fight with the ammo box, right? Those are just moment-to-moment cuts. And for something that's intercutting a fight scene and a narrative format story, to work with the different amount of time on one page from another page. It requires the use of different amounts of panels, right? So if you want to do something that's very moment to moment and you want to capture that on a page, you're going to need several moments, like 8 or 9 panels.
Sure.
If you want to capture something that's an exchange at a different location, you can use less panels. I guess the overall thought of translating film, which is continuous view of like panels constantly flowing every moment, to cutting between locations, like place to place, location to location, right? That's the transition that we're talking there from one spot to another spot, and the closure that happens between the two of those things. You can use, I don't know, you can use less page space to do that than you can in film, right? Because if in film it takes a certain amount of time to bring your focus from one place to another.
Especially with Robert De Niro. Holy cripes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
God. I was
No,
just
go
saying, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard to take something that was meant for one medium and then try to, I don't know, turn it into Play-Doh and mold it into something for another medium. I mean, I didn't know that about that because, like, I remember reading the campaign page, but like, you know, I read them once. If I like the book, I back it, and then I probably don't look at the campaign page again. You know, so I didn't remember that you were originally, you know, trying this out elsewhere. Like, you know, well, not trying it out, but had thoughts of it, you know, for another medium.
Well, I went to film school, so that's like the first place that it, you know.
Right, that I didn't know, so it probably should.
Well, that's why both Aldous and
me.
Twitless are like it feels like a storyboard, and it does. Aldous also said that in the Ashcan anthology piece, The Old Ways, I broke that down. We wrote the story, but I did all of the paneling and work with Dillard myself to make that, you know.
Yay, Dillard.
Yeah, Dillard was great. We had a lot of fun just, you know, working on the layouts together, and he would smoke cigarettes and we would talk shit and, you know, have a good time. But that, I don't know, Twitless, did you get a chance to look at that one? Because that one wasn't conceived of as a film. That was conceived of more as just a self-contained story. And I thought the pacing on that was also pretty decent.
Yeah, out of the two, most of the stories are stronger. Especially the first one. The first one, the Old Ways, is a very strong story, both in layout and structure.
The problem with Wendigo is that it was longer than we wound up having time for. Originally, it was over 12 pages, and Joe was like, I don't have time for it. Can we cut it down to just 10? And I was like, well, how do I take 4 pages out of my pacing, right? It was over.
Yeah, I still have to read it. I haven't got a chance to read that.
Which is a third of the story.
Wendigo,
we have a third of the space. You know, you're losing a third of the space.
Well, Wendigo, I think you're trying to do too much in the page count that you've got. It's extraordinarily dense.
Right. And that's one of the problems. It was
right.
It wasn't supposed to be 10 pages. It's supposed to be longer.
And what it is you're flanked. Sadly, you're flanked by 2 stories that are not nearly as dense but accomplish more. Like, there is not one character in the Old Ways that I don't have a good grasp of at the end of that story, and I've got a solid grasp of what's going on at the end of the New Way, or the New Lives. I don't have that with Boyd. Boyd's all over the place in Wendigo. You see his development. I see his development, but he's still it's back and forth. It's shifting, and I think that probably is encompassed by the 4 pages you probably had to condense down.
The idea was that as Boyd progresses in his career in the military and continues to push his intent to going to war, the more he loses.
Right. Have you ever seen the movie Soldier with Kurt Russell?
Yes, I love Soldier.
The intro montage of that is what you're looking to do in Wendigo. Is the impression I got.
I can go check that out.
Yeah, and it's the progression of the character as he goes through the training. And he becomes more and more of a badass and more of a hard ass, and people are falling all around
climbing
him,
the
but he
rope
keeps
scene,
on
I
he
remember
keeps
that.
on elevating. It's the same kind of thing. You're just showing it instead of military training. You're showing it with interpersonal relationships and how he's growing more and more distant. Things are falling away,
Right.
right?
Well, once again,
Um,
you know, like you mentioned movies, right, Twitless? Like I had to watch American Sniper to get a feel for what I wanted to say in Wendigo. So, you know, I guess you're right. We consume a lot of mixed media, a lot of film and TV.
and
No,
I think you would have been better off looking at like a Michael Golden book like The Nam.
I read The Nom when I was little. It was my first book.
There you go.
Wow.
What besides you reading up on comic book storytelling and stuff like that with the books that you got and stuff like that, just from a personal disposition, what did you do to like shift your thinking as far as like, you know, because you're the script writer, right? So it's different. Taking something that was meant for one medium and putting it to the other. What did you shift in yourself?
Like it was never meant for film. Again, you guys are going. I understand why you're going there because I wanted to tell it as film.
But it wasn't written as
But the
a
story was never
screenplay.
conceived of as a screenplay. The story was conceived of as a story. And I started breaking it down into acts, and I started pacing it to time to fit it into a 90+ runtime film.
Gotcha.
And that couldn't be done. So that's when I realized that this isn't going to work as a film. So it's not really like I was adapting it from film to a comic. It was a story that wouldn't work as film, that became a, visual storytelling format, the closest thing that I could make it, because there's, no way that it's going to be animation, right? It's not.
Gotcha.
So
I guess my question. Hold on. I guess my question still stands. So when you initially, when you tried to break it down to a film, but then realized it couldn't, how did you shift to, like, how did you mentally shift? Is what I want to know to comics, other than reading the books. Like, what did you do? This way, I can kind of maybe give us some advice to some people. Like, how did you because obviously you went to film school, so you knew how to break that down and realize it wouldn't work. So how did you mentally shift to the comic book format?
Well, I sat down with,
if I could tweak off that question, I think we could rephrase it by saying, how do you go from thinking in scenes to thinking in pages?
There you go.
Well, I think part of it, at least, and this is what I can say, is watching Neff and Garrett and kind of being part of the conversations. In looking at Scott McCloud and reading all of those books, then shifting into reading every kind of comic that we could get our hands on, indie, mainstream, Western, bande dessinée, manga. We kind of went into everything that caught our eye and looked at it through the lens of Scott McCloud. Like, okay, what are they doing here? What works in these panels? What doesn't work? Why do I like this story? What transitions are they using?
What I think, Twitless, is, I don't mean to cut you off. What I think you're specifically asking is, how do you manage time versus manage pages in the overall page count, right? Because if you're thinking about scenes in a movie, you're thinking about
time,
runtime within those scenes. So if you're thinking about pages in a story, in a
you have to think
comic,
about space and time.
Exactly, right. You have to think about space instead of time. So then you have to think about how much you can tell on one page. That's why that one, moment between Jack and Harrison plays out where it does. That's a scene. But that's one page, right? Whereas the leading scene, the lead up to getting the refugees together, that's several pages, but that's still one trailing scene. Hell, the first page, it's not a scene, but you have one scene on one page. You have a moment, for the opening on the front page. They're both single pages. So when I think about the pacing, I don't know. I just did. It's the hardest way to. It's such a hard thing to think about because I didn't have a total set number of pages that I wanted to do. We wanted to ballpark it to 60. So I was in my head, well, I could use 2 pages for this, 3 pages for that. how many pages can we do for the fight scene? Well, we need at least 15, if not more, because we can't have like less than a third of the book feel like no action whatsoever, right? So we have to revise some of that, make it 30-page fight, 30 pages of fighting. All of that requires you to like sit down with the story that you're trying to tell and divide it up into pages. And that's one of the reasons why it went over 60, and with the bonus content wound up being 74. That's why I'm budgeting myself a whole lot more pages for book 2, because there's a whole lot more to say, a whole lot of events that transpire that complicate things. I can't tell you them all.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But it's like, it's not just a fight. There are new elements that continue to complicate this exchange, that make this event pivotal. This is midway.
Can I interrupt this discussion for just 2 very important points? One here is from Darko D13. He's asking, he or she, don't mean to assume, is this available to buy anywhere now, or will it be in the next campaign, and when would that be?
It'll be available on the website, MAVRICS.com, the same way you spell the book, with no E and no C. And that's launching at the end of the month. You can get it for $25, because that's the cover price. None of the extras are available. That was all for you guys on the crowdfunding campaign. And we will also be doing a reprint with none of the bonus exposition or art in the back. That'll be going to stores and be available as catch-up on the next campaign. And that one's going to be like less. It's going to be considerably less.
Cool. I was suggesting more creators should do that. They had the money to do it. Do like a second, like when your campaign closes and you sold everybody back your books, come out with a second edition that's probably like a lower quality or something, and not charge so much.
Yeah. I don't want to compromise the quality. I certainly will compromise the page count.
And we won't do as many covers and cover finishes.
Well, the retail version is only going to have the one,
Right.
and we're not going to do the same finishes. Garrett will be doing the art, as far as I know, on book 2, but we do have another artist coming in that's doing a standalone story with me, called Operation Vesuvius, on campaign 2, and he may wind up taking over the series after that. The details are still uncertain. We're still talking about it, but we'll know eventually, right?
Cool. The second thing I wanted to mention, this is really important. It's a special somebody's birthday today, and it just occurred. And I think it would be a really nice thing if we were the first ones to wish him happy birthday. Maybe we could sing, if the panel is up for that. We're gonna greet Jay Dalla. That's Joe Ball addressing him. But I'm gonna sing. You're welcome to join me or not. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Jay Dalla.
You're the gayest hottie in CG.
Happy birthday to you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
The harmony of your mutual voices is like a combination of Fergie and Jesus to steal a line from Step Brothers.
Mike,
Yes,
is
Rain
already
Radio,
set.
it's an acronym.
We're going to be copyright struck now. Apparently, I don't think any AI is ever going to pick up that harmony.
Yeah.
Off key in so many ways.
Oh, and then you have the lag coming in too.
Yeah, I think we're fine. We're
that's
good. Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about Medium, I think, so far throughout this question period, and I think one of the most important things is that in this medium for marketing, crowdfunding comic books in social media, there's a lot of room for experimentation and a lot of room to find a unique audience for the kind of story you want to tell. And it sounds like everything you've done was with intent. And so it's just a matter of breaking through and finding the right audience for that voice. And it seems like you've done that quite effectively. The campaign is a success by crowdfunding standards.
Oh yeah.
So you definitely have a lot of fertile ground to build from. It also sounded like you were going to be doing something pretty expansive with your follow-up projects. What, but other than finishing the main stories, what other aspects of this world are you planning to focus on in the upcoming projects you have?
So right now, Mike Oden wrote a story. We're still tweaking the script called MAVRICS Mobile Support Squad, and that is about the combat engineers and their big truck that are on the ground servicing MAVs when they go into the field. So we're looking at that area of it. Kimasabe, Lee Byron Carver is going to do another piece for us, another solo story about what's going on in Australia while all of this is
Cool.
transpiring. So we're going to be examining that part of the world. Scott McCullough is doing a story where we focus on the hard suits, the humanoid augmentation robotic devices. They're kind of like little small power armor, Day Before Tomorrow, whatever the one with Tom Cruise is, where they run around in the field. It's actually a really cool scene in Vesuvius, the project that I'm working on, where they deploy from a box on a Mav's back and they jump out. It's really neat. So we're looking at like ground level stuff. I really want to look at like what it's like, the experience of the people on the ground while these giant machines are like stepping all over the place and things blowing up. You'll get more of that in volume 2 also. Then there's the anthology that we're doing on the second campaign, which has got pieces from Vaughn. We're working with Phil. We got Mark Polton already turned his in. Chimera's doing stuff. We've approached a lot of people to like do little vignettes about other parts of this world. Some of the stuff will definitely like fill in more of the information in the background about Norca, the unification, the Cascade, stuff like that. It's kind of intended to be a smorgasbord rather than to have just one single comprehensive storyline tell the entire story. And maybe that's a detriment, but for me, it's exciting to tell so many little stories that focus specifically on that one element. Like with this, I just wanted to tell a story starting with one squad of people. It's a huge, setting. It's the world of tomorrow from a alternate future, right? That's you have to tell you about an entire world. But I just wanted to start on one small group of people in one conflict in a small place, without, going in depth and being like, so this is what we're dealing with, guys. This is,
And with
the setting is, and long ass page.
with
Yeah, I
each
got that.
new arc, you kind of zoom out a little bit
Yeah.
more, and it gets bigger. The conflict gets bigger. The stakes get bigger. It affects more.
So we're kind of
You
storm
see
for
more of the world.
I'm working on a storm for a solo story right now. Bigfoot in Russia. Is he Russian? Gustav, I think his name. Russian, right?
Yeah, it's Gustave Tremblay. He's
Quebec.
he's
Right?
from Canada, actually.
Oh, is he?
Originally. So
Oh, okay.
Norca is the Northern Continental Alliance. It's Mexico, New York, and Canada, or not New York,
Okay.
the United States and Canada. And all this gives me shit because he's like, Canada doesn't have anything to offer. But that's where we got Tremblay
That's
from.
not true.
So-
I've never said that. They have an excellent farm system for decent hockey players, and they produce maple syrup that's not nearly as good as Vermont's.
Right.
Oh gosh.
Oh wow,
Ooh.
shots fired.
I thought Norcom might have been like NATO-ish, so that's the
Yeah.
vibe I was getting, but I didn't know
Right.
exactly what countries. So
It kind of like the entire national system, like of the global economy, as you're on the money. The Cascade is all of the things, right? You have some climate elements. You have that leading to the breakdown of international commerce and finance, and then that leads to warfare. And we're just jumping this period in time, kind of the way like the world changed after COVID, right? You have all of these different elements of the world changing, and we're jumping past that, and we're going to look back on what happened during the Cascade at certain points in the story. But my intent is not to explore that horrible transformative event too much, but to talk about the fallout.
sure.
And you're going to focus pretty much in this universe, or did you have other properties that you wanted to develop as well?
We're working on other stuff. I've got two other books, two other titles, I should say, that I'm working on with Odin. We're doing your book,
I have a book that is
Jadi,
yeah, it's
that we're
called
working
Shiny.
on.
It's a Polish.
I was hired to write another book, and I'm helping on that to like a more of a writer slash I don't know project manager capacity. So I'm busy. Got a lot of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. You don't have any preview pages or anything to share with us, would you? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know. I have to ask Odin if he wants to
Oh.
show any of the stuff off, but
Unless you want to show, I have concept art. That's all I have.
oh, for yours, yeah, we could show yours off.
Cool.
I'm
Yeah,
not,
you
we're
do.
not- I
Yeah,
have to
you do
it.
this. Let me see if I can give you the field real quick.
Sure. Give us while you're digging around, give us your impressions of how it's been so far networking in the CG environment. What's your take on establishing a brand and marketing?
I think down here in the slums, it's awesome.
Everyone is
I love
so
the slums. The
welcoming.
slums are the best. I worked with, I'd say, 30 plus creators on the prints and additional merch for this campaign. Like we had Chibi Selena do the stickers. We had 6am do the art for the standees. We have a Joe Ball cover. We have a Joe Catapano cover. We've got a Rob Willis cover. Rob Willis is colored by Matt Yackey.
Yeah.
All the prints that we did were almost entirely CG and CG adjacent artists that we networked with, and it was awesome just getting to do stuff with them, like the anthology, right? It's Chemo and Dillard, and I'm editing, and then I'm working with Joe Catapano, and he's doing the art, and I gotta say, like, everyone's been very receptive, very welcoming. It's just been great. I don't think I would have had this type of experience in any other group. Even some of the indie comics groups that I've encountered while being a part of the CG network, they're not quite as, I don't know, thorough or accessible. So I really am grateful for the reception that we've had here. And the big thing that I know is that, like, y'all are comic book fans as well
Right.
as creators, right? And there are a lot of people that are a part of this network that enjoy reading comics, that back projects, comic projects, and that love talking about comics. And I think that's incredibly vital to what we're doing, especially if we want to continue putting out, good work, right? Like help steel sharpen steel, right? Do you want to? How do we share the screen?
You have to go to StreamYard.
StreamYard, and then we go to share screen.
Yep.
Present. You got to present yourself.
I am presenting.
Presenting.
Which one? That concept? Yeah. Okay.
Don't present like
Is,
Vic Mignogna
is
did
this
on
Juanito?
Chrissy Mayer's
Yeah.
stream.
So
Don't
this
get any of
is
that.
this is Freak Girl's concept art for the
This is-
monster in
Yeah.
Jadi.
So Jadi is it's a Polish holiday. It's kind of like the Polish version of like the Day of the Dead, and that's kind of it's not the plot of it, but sorry, I wasn't expecting to like pitch this right
Hey,
now.
we're just-
So.
We're just hanging out. Yeah, it's all
It's-
good.
Yeah, we're
it's-
just hanging
it's-
out. It's all chill.
It's
Yeah,
very
formal.
In a world based on the Polish Day of the Dead.
it's very Jersey Devilish, like
Is that the
So-
the guy in the mountain? What's
Yeah,
his
so
name?
this is so in Polish mythology there's not like one main devil. There's a type of demon called Karkonosh. It's like the demon under the mountain, but there's supposed to be like many of them. In my version there's just one, and that is what this is. This is Karkonosh. He is based off of the actual Polish demon. So it's like a bird head with deer horns, goat hooves, the wings. So it's,
I think the Jersey Devil stole your.
Yeah, he totally stole Polish mythology.
Yeah, seriously.
Let me grab this from Twitter real quick. Do they still see that? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Something stirring underneath
Oh, do you have
the
more? Do
mountain.
you want to
yeah,
cycle
if you
through?
want
Yeah, cycle
other,
through.
The other ones aren't in this folder. I'm not gonna lie. But then this is
Lena,
this is the main character. She does not.
the protagonist.
Yeah. Her name is Lena, and she is a
Oh, cute.
Polish demon where
Takes place
they-
in Poland, guys.
Yes. That's like Polish, so like
Nice
Polish,
hits.
Polish fairy tales and stuff like that. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. But the type of demon that she is, it's a demon that takes the form of a bird and can take human form, and like they were often like would seduce men or women or whatever.
Somebody.
It's relevant to the story, but it's not like it's not about that.
Is that mine? Oh, mine.
It's about Lena though,
Right.
and she has a moment where she goes from being a woman to becoming one of these demons, and it's about that transformation and about her journey through the underworld towards her goal. And we can't really tell you more than that because it'll give away too much about what the book's about, and you don't actually get to see the pitch. I'm trying to find here. Here we go. Here's.
Oh yeah, we can hear you clicking furiously.
Sorry, guys. I apologize. I'm gonna
You got
share
the super fat
this.
going.
See
The
if this
checkpoint
actually
says. He knows.
And then
Likovich said somebody buried Ren in the pet cemetery.
Yeah. That's cool.
There you go. So this is a concept piece. This was a test that we did for the field. This is the comic that Odin and I are working on right now.
We're
Did I
getting a
not
few
share
comments
it?
from chat. Is there any way you two could maybe get a little closer to the microphone? I think some in chat are having a little trouble
It's
hearing
doing
you.
that weird thing again.
yeah, I don't know what's going on. Is this better? No.
It's basically the same. I mean, I can hear you, but it is low.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
What up,
you know,
Stanley? What up, Sheila?
Sorry.
What up, Checkpoint?
so tell us a bit about this this character piece you're showing
Phil?
us.
What up,
So
Philly
this is a
Phil?
character that Odin came up with called the Field, and he is a soldier who was injured in combat and has since been who has gone through a program and been cybernetically enhanced. His right arm and right leg have been replaced by new tech, and so he is a military private contractor working with the guy who runs the I guess the tech company that gave him his new bits, and he's goes on covert missions and cool stuff to stop bad guys in Afghanistan, and there's Russians, and it's pretty cool. I'm
Was he a
working on
test
this book
pilot
with him.
prior to his accident?
He was just a no, he wasn't a test pilot. He was just a
No?
regular soldier. No, he was not a test pilot. I know it's got some similarities in a lot of ways to a lot of the stuff that Odin really enjoyed. It's definitely got a Captain America vibe. It's got
Also, just want to
US
clarify to Mike. Owen.
Definitely
Yeah.
no illusions whatsoever.
No,
Just
yeah.
$1 million man.
you can't
None.
see it.
We have the means to fix him. I'm
Sinatra-
getting-
That's a good line.
Speaking of
We
the
should
devil,
probably put that in the marketing somewhere. Yeah.
Finatra has a book about a guy who has one of his legs replaced with cybernetics.
Oh, his third leg?
It was his third leg. I heard,
Yeah.
right? It was the third leg.
Remember when that Mark Brooks stuff popped off, and then
Yeah.
poor freaking streamers like Neff and all these professional people had to talk about the controversy of Mark Brooks stealing somebody's dick book? I was like, poor people have to talk about it. Or they don't have to talk about it, but it became something to mention, I guess.
Miller wants to know who drew that.
That was Kevin Keane.
Kevin Keane. Oh, I know him.
You know, there was something about Smaller that was going around, and I wanted to share that if I could. Well read.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I want to get a chance to let you know. Sorry
Yep.
about that.
Darko D13, cool art, guys. Yeah, it was nice everything you said about the slums. I think I agree that this is where a lot of the enthusiasm, creativity, and energy is right now. People are doing new things because people are willing to take risks here, and they're
And you got
not worried.
peers. You guys are like, yeah, we're competitors, but we're peers also. And feedback is great like this. Like when we got into it, when we were launching the campaign, people like you were invaluable, showing us what to do, what not to do. So, we're all very grateful for the advice and the assistance that we've had.
We are kind of really all in it together.
Smaller would say, yeah. Smaller would say you have to stick with it, keep up with the fight. You know, he's right here on the internet, telling you to, you got to fight through all the adversity. Well read. If you would share my screen.
Oh yeah.
Well, there was something about Smaller, Mike Miller on the internet. Yeah.
Oh okay.
He wants to tell you. You know. Get him, Miller. Get him, Smaller. Smaller. I mean, when he said smaller, I didn't know it was that small.
What is
It's a
happening?
It's a little big to be Mike, I think.
The Carl
Smack
Douglas
you.
soundtrack makes the video.
Oh man.
You've made a lifelong enemy, Finatra.
No, so while Neff is looking, quick question before Twitless walks all over my question again.
Anytime.
What I was trying to ask you before, though, was there a switch that you had to flick in your head, or did you have to like unlearn?
I had to look at frames differently. I had to. Could you find the field wraparound?
Oh,
Yeah, I had to look at frames differently. It's not a movie frame, right? It's not a cinematography frame. I had to look at moments, snapshots, not action. So like if you're telling the story and you are doing like a moment to moment sequence, you can't just tell that as the way you could in film. So I did have to learn to kind of imagine if I'm going to do something in a cinematic way. What are the key components of that sequence that we have to show? And those are the beats that we focused on. So like that scene with the coffee, right? Rather than tracking, or panning or zooming, we get still shots. And it does come down to imagining the key points in that sequence and representing them on the page.
So there was like a bit of like an unlearning process.
And a relearning process because
No, obviously, yeah.
There was definitely an unlearning process, and now it's a weird Spanglish that I'm speaking, right? Like comics is Spanish and movies is English. I'm speaking Spanglish or some weird hybrid language. This is Aaron Alfecci version of the field. This is a wraparound cover format for issue 1. It's currently being colored by Matt Yackey.
Nice.
Yeah. Can we zoom in on like some of the details?
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Hold on.
A lot of stuff going on here.
It starts over here with him jumping off this drone. It was kind of modeled off of a Captain America cover, surprise, surprise, that Odin really liked. And so then he goes from, jumping down to fighting this guy over here. This is his back. And then he's kicking this guy in the chest. And then he's going to charge in and shoots this guy and jumps up and grabs the drone and, jumps down and punches this guy in the face. So it's this really long sequence. And once it's colored, I think it will separate out the chaos a little bit. But Alfecci did a really good job with the line weight in this. I think he really does that bolder line weight in the front to separate out the midground from the foreground and background, making it easier to see. I can't wait to see Matt's colors on it.
Yeah, it looks good, man.
It's amazing detail.
Yeah, Alfecci's really talented.
It pisses me off.
I know, right? Well, Roquefort pisses me off, so.
Yeah, it's almost sad to color it, right? Like, because the pencils are so amazing, but I bet it would really pop with the colors too.
Well, it will. I mean, we'll show it off when Matt's done with it. He's taking it because it's a lot. He's taking his time with it, which is really appreciated because it's very fiddly. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Kevin's piece was quicker to do, and that was also really more of a test to see if he got the concept of the character and could design the flow of the action page well. It's that one, get the motion right. And I think Kevin's going to be taking over the project. So we're really excited to see issue 1 come out of him. And then there's Judex, which is the other book Odin and I are working on, and that's all in black and white, and Fabrizio is doing the art on that. So maybe I can show you a page of that. Let me see.
Yeah.
Here real quick.
I think you're showing your whole.
My whole screen. So I'm gonna stop sharing my whole screen.
Yeah. You got to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Don't want to dox your DMs.
Yeah, I'm usually whenever Neff is in his computer.
I don't know how technology works. I'm just a sci-fi writer.
Piloting the StreamYard to make sure that he doesn't do that. So I had to jump in and let him know that I wasn't going to be stopping him from
doxing myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Which one time I accidentally did it myself. So can't blame it all on you. Just most of it.
Too many Google Drives. Yeah, it's in this one.
I heard a lot of people ascribing themselves that title of like writing in the sci-fi genre, but do you have to reach out to references, people in science to be able to do that effectively, or do you think it's just an aesthetic?
Do
mostly?
you want to answer this?
Yeah, the amount of research that he has done is kind of insane.
To the point where we're predicting the future.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of the stuff that, not like a lot of it, but a decent amount of stuff that he has done research on, and they're like, oh, hey, I think
this
it's
should
going
happen.
To play out
it's going to play out this way.
And then it does. So
there's Judex.
It's kind of funny, and I yell at him all the time, like, how about you, like, plan out how to win the lottery, or, like, something else, because if all of your other predictions are coming true, make something...
But yeah, it requires a healthy degree of research. You got to write what you know, right? You can't write what you don't know. You can learn it while you're going, but you got to be learning it to make it believable. So there is a lot of science that you have to like look at in order to be able to write convincing science fiction. Or near future speculative fiction, technically, is what I do.
There's a lot of stuff that he brings to me, and like, that sounds really cool, but I don't understand it.
Here's a page from Judex.
There you go.
Aldous is gonna like this guy.
Looks like it's in Aldous' wheelhouse. 1930s,
1940s.
1940s inspired, yeah.
That's a very nice piece.
Who did that?
Fabrizio. I don't remember Fabrizio's last name. You can look it up though, right? Yeah, we got some finished pages in the background, but I wanted to show you this sort of, one splash page that we've got, which is gorgeous. This is him standing amidst the Court of Miracles. The story takes place in Nazi-occupied France. Judex is a pre-existing character that Odin sort of reimagined and put in this setting, and I'm working on the script with him and, editing and stuff. Fabrizio Ugolini is how you say his name. Fabrizio. Yeah.
Very nice. A lot of things in the pipeline for you. You've got
different genres too, right?
Yeah.
Superhero, we got some sort of noir, old school shadow vibe. We got crazy mechs. We've got a demon chick. There's another project that I'm not going to talk about because it's not mine, but I'm writing for it.
Oh, you are doing it unzipped. Oh, cool.
Hey, Odin's in the house.
He goes, I know these books. Yeah.
Busted.
Yeah. He didn't make it in time. I told him to heckle me from the chat because whenever Odin's on the show, I always make sure to show up and just act like a dick.
Right.
And I clip it and then make videos about it. Yeah. I
You are a good heckler.
To say he hated Eric Weathers.
Yes.
And then I clipped it and made a video called Odin Hates Eric and caused a controversy. It's fun.
That's
You are
the
a good
tradition
heckler
in these
now.
times.
Yeah, Mike's great.
Yeah. Where would we be without our lovable trolls? So
Right? I think that's why I'm so at home here.
Yeah, that's why I came here. What are you talking about?
came for the trolling.
Yeah. Stayed for the comics.
I was just gonna say that.
I mean, it's why people watch when Twiddlers is on. It's just for the trolling.
Oh, jeez.
Well, awesome. Nep and Freak Girl. So, would you like to leave us with any closing thoughts before we wrap things up? Just be on the lookout for more, I guess. Right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's going to be a lot more coming next year. Mavericks is going to come in 2024. We're taking all next year to put it together because there are a lot of moving parts, but we're going to be putting out a lot of stuff next year too. That
That's also partly because we had so much trouble with
Getting
paper
this,
shortages and printing that we are,
this book's a year late.
yeah, that we are not going anywhere with it until it is like
Printed.
done, printed.
I'm not going to
have
I'm not
the
going to run a
books.
campaign unless I have books. I'm not going to take that chance again.
Which
Not
is
happening.
why we're setting it for 2024.
And there's like 6 books plus the main book plus the supplements. There's a lot of books on the next campaign that need to be done.
And you've been able to promote primarily through your own channel, or do you find that going around to the other channels has also been invaluable?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to take that one?
Oh, I was just gonna say that there were so many people who welcomed us and had us on their shows and got to introduce us to people that we wouldn't have met or interacted with before. Because I think it was Aldous, you said at the beginning that we had less than 500 when we launched, like 500 subs on our channel. I think we barely had 200 subs on our channel when we launched. So we definitely got a huge boost from the community in general, people having us on and just talking to everyone. I know Bancroft had reached out to us when we were still in pre-launch and had Neff and Garrett on to kind of introduce everyone to them and to the campaign, and that helped a lot. So just everyone being so awesome and kind of welcoming us and letting us on their show to talk about Mavericks and let me babble. It was much appreciated, and it made a huge difference.
There really is a sense of community here. Like that's the thing that is really striking. There's always streams. There's always people in the streams, in the chats. You see these faces everywhere you go. It's like Bancroft's old opening, right? It was cheers, and everybody knows your name, right? And that's really what it feels like. There are so many welcoming people that have had us on and helped promote us. But we did do a lot of marketing outside of CG. We went to conventions, we ran ads, we did a lot of networking with other people out there to bring interest to the campaign. We ran a Kickstarter that cleared almost $9,000. So the idea is that there are a lot more people out there who want these books that may not know these books and these other creators exist, and it's our intent to bridge that gap to a degree, and to bring in customers who want to read books like the ones that we're putting out and the ones that we're reading, and that'll lead the trail, or at least it was intended to lead the breadcrumb trail to some of these other CG books that are also on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, but that's all changing now thanks to Indiegogo's policies, and everyone's going to their own crowdfunding sites. So we'll figure that out next year. We'll figure out how we're going to be doing mixed marketing and running. I know Brian Bedvitas is doing his own magazine, the Gwazine, right? And he's running ads in there.
I'm very excited for
So
Oh, Aerith, yeah.
yeah, Aerith is running doing the Gwazine. He's running ads for people to
he
put their
ran
stuff.
that all on his own site.
Pete
too.
Samedi's doing Alterna. You can run ads in there. So even if we're not all together on Indiegogo, where we can all kind of coalesce and trade, peeping at each other's campaigns, there is still a way to network off of individual unrelated sites on the internet. It's just
So the
gonna take
QR
more time.
code is more ubiquitous than any Indiegogo
Yep.
link. So
Yep. We use
And
those
if
to
you're gonna
great
use one,
effect,
use a dynamic QR code.
because you can change the address.
Yes, because even after it's printed, you can reroute it. So if you have an
Ooh.
Indiegogo campaign now, you can have it set there, and then your Indiegogo campaign closes, but you're opening up a shop, or you're going on CG now, or
So
you're
the-
doing something else, you can reroute that same QR
Awesome.
code. So if someone
Never
opens up their
expires.
Alterna and you have an ad there, and it's like from 2 years ago, and they scan it, it's not a dead link. You can make it go wherever you want it to. So dynamic QR code.
informative.
Yeah, actually, I was going to mention, since you did mention you wanted to explore the cinematic aspect of Mavericks. I remember for Tiger Blue, Fowler was putting QR codes into the book, and they would lead to links of short little videos he did, like movies of Tiger Blue, and those were actually really awesome. You could do something similar if you wanted to.
I mean, if Dying Days has the time, we've got the budget. I'm just saying. I don't know how well he wants to work with giant robots. They're kind of difficult sometimes. Well, we'll work something
He's
out.
great. Freaking
We are
Diane.
we are going to be doing some animation. We did have an animated trailer that we did ourselves. It did have like 15 to 30 seconds of
I had 30
30 seconds of cell animation on the
Yeah.
back end of the trailer on the campaign page. So the next trailer, I
The
think,
best part was me whispering into the
yeah,
microphone.
everyone loves that. So we are going to have to be up in the game and doing a more impressive trailer next time. And we do want to explore
I just wanna
other
whisper all the dialogue in it. Just that's the whole thing.
other avenues. There was a discussion about maybe doing a 16-bit side-scrolling shooter, or working with a friend of mine who did our figure prototype, who's putting together a mech tactics game.
Also, when the website finally is like launched and everything is operational, you're gonna want to check it out. It's very cool.
Oh yeah, you guys
There's
can build
a
your own
character
mechs.
creator. You can build your own mech.
Ooh.
It's like
If you got the collector's box, you also get these dog tags in the
Yes.
collector's box, and on the back there is that dynamic QR code, which will take you to the website. And if you got anyone can like go in and play around with mech customization, but if you got the collector's box, there's actually a pilot's registry page from the first campaign, Origins Part 1. And the trading cards that we sent out on this campaign, you get your own trading card, your own virtual trading card
So
that
you
has
just
your
go in,
designed
yeah.
mech, and it flips over and has your information on the back.
Nice.
So yeah, Mavericks has a website now. So
yes, it's not fully functional yet, but
Getting there.
Media is important.
Well, keep it up, guys. There's tons of room to try out new things and see what hits. So, and great market research here in the slums, close to the customers, close to the collegial creatives, I would say. It's pretty flat, no hierarchy. Pariah Carey says, "Is this well-read abuser?" I have been called that on occasion, and if you'd like to abuse me, please come onto Unzipped. It's the post-stream show. That's where the link goes into the chat. Alcohol goes into my mouth, and anything goes at that
It's
point.
where everyone shows up to tell us how we were totally wrong on the review.
Exactly. That's where the beatdown occurs. So everybody,
I think you
please
guys had
join
all
us.
really good points.
Yeah.
Twitless said a lot of things that I'm taking to heart. Same thing with all this.
He got
Appreciate
freaking angry.
everyone's. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gotten angry.
Yes,
Well, I
it
mean,
was-
You were pretty angry before the stream.
When I was angry, when I said, "Oh, geez, I think I might have a slight disagreement with something."
Could you calm down, please?
Excuse me, ma'am. We're gonna have to ask you to calm down, please.
This is a Wendy's.
No, thank you for creating these books. Thank you. I mean,
Thanks for reading.
the passion you put into it is very clear. This is not something like there's a lot of mainstream books where you can tell people are phoning it in. They're doing it because they can just put anything down on the page and they know they're getting published. And that's not. It's very clear from reading that commentary at the end. When you break down every single page and what went into every single page, this is a labor of love.
Well, and I think beyond that, the fact that you can actually explain what went into every page sets you apart. There's definitely the sense with a lot of books that people aren't really sure what's going on in their own book, and that's not the case with this at all. So
Yep.
I appreciated that for sure. It makes understanding what's going on when you're talking about a review much easier, obviously, but it also makes it easier to to critique and to lay out some things, because there's no semblance of, well, what's he trying to say here. You lay it out bluntly.
And I'd like to actually add on to that and say I wish more creators would do this, because there was even one page where you described how a force field effect was created, and you even spelled out how that was done. And I think that it's really instructive to other creators who look at something being done and go, oh, I'd like to do that. And then you offered and said, here's even how to kind of do it. That's amazing. And it helps the indie scene a lot to see something they like potentially and then be able to see what went into it and then maybe replicate it. So I wish more creators would do that type of thing. That's really cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. Really do. Everything's intentional, right? And you only get to do it once, so do it with,
The best
you know, with focus and purpose, you know.
With vigor.
Speaking of doing things with purpose, Wilberforce Wooster is scolding us that we, Twitless and I, ambushed Neff on this review. So we are quite despicable for having done
Subscribe to their channel.
You invited me. Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much. The panel, your insights were invaluable, and we're grateful for having you here and discussing the book with us. That was quite beneficial. Thank you. Neff and Frequency Girl, thank you very much for putting the project together and giving us something to talk about and enjoy, and hopefully going forward to build upon and continue to grow. So we appreciate you.
Well, we'll
Thank you
keep
very
asking
much.
you guys questions so we can improve.
Excellent. And thank you for joining us for this portion.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us on.
I heard a lip smack. That's a Finatra comment.
Oh, I was gonna say something, but I'll say it for later.
All right. Save all
Yeah,
of
yeah.
your dirty little thoughts for the after stream.
All right, we're gonna go full Mike Mignona or Vic Mignona and unzipped.
What?
Yeah. So everyone, have a good night. There's no review planned in the near future just yet. I am putting some things together, so stay tuned. Keep an eye on my Twitter, and hopefully I'll have something for you all very soon. Until then, have a good night.
Have a great night, all.
Good night,
Yeah.
Everybody.